Jessica Thomas is the current president of Heartland MLS. Last time we talked to her, she was helping to lead our association through massive change in the wake of the August 2024 settlement. What value does the MLS still provide without offers of compensation? What comes next? What happens in the future? Jessica covers consolidation, data integrity, and the long-term integration of artificial intelligence into our platforms. We also just had a lot of fun. I'm Alex Gehring, and this is Kansas City Real Talk.
For over 20 years, A.B. May has been a trusted partner for real estate agents in Kansas City. With spring here, families across KC are looking to you, the agents they trust, to lead them through one of life's biggest decisions. With Home Warranty Plus, A.B. May has walked beside you, extending care to every client before the sale and for years after they've settled in. Together, we bring peace of mind to homeownership. Learn more about Home Warranty Plus at hw.abmay.com.
Jessica, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you.
How long has it been since you were last on the podcast?
When did the forms change?
That's a good question. You know, we had to do that together. What was that?
August.
That was
17th
August of 24.
Of 2024.
Yeah. I mean, a lot has happened since then. Here's what I'll say, though.
Nobody died.
Nobody died.
It was good.
You and I both, I think, feel like we were calm about it. We felt really good about the direction that we were going to go in. And our prediction that nobody would die came true. And how about that?
Yeah, it worked. I have actually talked to other market execs and staff, and they were like, yeah, we needed to copy your forms. In marketplaces that had to redo their forms several times over because of the change.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, we got it right the first time. So we tweaked it as we tweak forms every year, but the global initiative, nailed it, got it done.
Worked out.
Nobody died.
Nobody died. Nobody died. And I think that the marketplace is much better as a result of us going through all of that.
Yeah,
Truly.
Definitely more transparent.
More transparent. People have to articulate their value in a better way. So I know that you worked so hard on that. And your role during that, you were the chair of the forms committee, and you also were
treasurer of the MLS board.
The treasurer of the MLS board, and you were also on the committee that was driving those changes and formulating our strategy to move forward. That was a lot of work. How has your role evolved? Your roles evolved since then?
Other than just the natural progression on the board of directors, I am fortunately no longer the chair of Forms Committee, but it is still my favorite committee. So Perry Crum, if you're listening. So I am still on that committee. And other than the fact that I do get a lot of calls of, we know you'll know this. And a lot of times I'm like, yeah, nope, don't know the answer to that one. But this year is my presidential year on the Heartland MLS Board of Directors. It is an honor to serve. And to be quite frank, I am on the board because I started when you started as president. So
yeah,
most days I thank you for that.
Oh, most days. March
15th of 2024, I was a little like, oh my God, because that's when the news of the settlement broke.
You were a little mad at me right at that moment,
Alex.
But it was perfect. You were the person for that job. I didn't see any of that coming. I really didn't. You know, Nostradamus though I sometimes am, but I didn't see the timeline there, and it couldn't have worked out any better. So
we've had a lot of didn't see that coming. Since 2022, honestly, but there's also a lot of stuff that, the lawsuits aren't going to stop. People are going to find a way to sue, and we can just figure out how to be best positioned to brace for the storm or handle it and come out better on the other side, which is what I think happened with the settlement.
Absolutely.
So,
well, let's take a couple steps back because because we were going through so many things the last time you and I talked. Well, not the last time you and I talked, but the last time you were on the podcast. we didn't lay some fairly important groundwork that I really like to lay when we have these episodes.
Okay.
And I want people to really know about you and your journey. So I want to start there before we get into a bunch of MLS stuff.
Gotcha.
Because I think that that's a really important piece of this. So tell me how you got started in real estate. And I don't, you know what, this is kind of crazy, but I don't think that I know your journey on that either. And so I'm genuinely curious. What was the thing that made you say, I want to do this?
So my dad was a realtor. And it took years because we were estranged, but it took years for me to remember that. So I think there's always been a foundation. And when I was 19, I actually went to become a realtor class and explored it. And the 100% commission only scared me. In hindsight, I was still living at home. I should have absolutely taken the leap before I had kids and bills and all of that other stuff. Fast forward, I had been in the employee benefits arena, licensed agent on that side of the world for years, and I had hit kind of the ceiling to be in management and leadership in Kansas City. So to go further, I was going to have to move to the East Coast. And I had opportunities, but I would have been a single mom on the East Coast without support for me and my son. And after about a year of, do I go, do I not go, I was like, I'm going to do something completely different. However, that year was 2008, so it was not my brightest idea. It took me until 2009 to pull the trigger to jump. And I will never forget, in that post-license class, one of the instructors said, who here is waiting until they have 6 months of money saved up before they take the leap and start their career? And I was like, and the instructor, who I'm sure was like an 8-pack a day smoker, in her deep, raspy voice said, she's the only one that's going to survive. She's like, if you're unsure, just go do it. And I did. So in 2009, licensed in both states, started, never looked back. As it seems to happen in a lot of fields that I do and a lot of things that I do, at some point I end up knowing enough stuff to be a teacher. Mm-hmm. And Dan Sweeney required that I get my broker's license. I got my broker's license in one of the worst snowstorms that Kansas City has ever had. And the school told us the night before, we've never shut down, so arrive early, plan on getting here, be safe. My car got snowed, plowed in. And so I was lacing up.
In the parking lot or
no,
at home?
At home. But I only lived like a mile away from Ward Parkway. So I was literally lacing up boots to go. And as I reached for the handle, the phone rang. And for the first time in 27 years, we're closing the school. And so I'm like, oh my God, like all the stress of having to walk. We had like 13 inches of snow. And so that's
what
how.
What year was that?
2013.
In 13.
So that was how the journey to broker began. And I haven't really looked back then, but I have served on several committees at KCRAR, professional development we were just talking about one of those years, and diversity and forms is my favorite. And as you know, it is hard to get on the forms committee.
It is.
And once I finally got, I'm like, I'm never leaving. So,
yeah, you know, here, I don't know if I should say this or not. It's hard to get on the forms committee. It's hard to get people off the forms committee.
It is hard to get people off the forms committee. It is. So, but, you know, here's the thing is that if you don't do rural properties, to sit in a room with somebody that's all that they do, or condos or that's anything like that, or luxury, there is so much value at it. But yes, there's also, I've loved the devil's advocate. I've loved the back and forth. But, you know, I still teach agents to this day. If you read our contract, it tells you the whole process, soup to nuts, and almost in order.
It's the blueprint.
You know, and I may be weird enough to be like, no, that's in paragraph 10. But I was like, I don't expect my agents to be that, you know, weird about the forms, but to have a really good knowledge of them, I do. And I have been a managing broker since 2023. And a week ago, promoted to senior vice president of our brokerage.
Nice. I saw that.
And I am just head down doing the work.
Nice.
So that's where it was.
I love it. What is it about forms that that makes it your favorite? What is that?
It's the fact that I never go to a meeting and don't learn something.
Yeah,
like it's
too.
Always something. And I've gotten different perspectives, and I've gotten ones where I'm like, no, I know very strongly how I feel. I actually had an interesting issue the other day about removing the resolution or the in its present condition after a buyer did inspections, and the buyer's agent on one side said, our attorney says we don't have to do that. And I was just like, but I say we do. So, and if my agent won't get their check because of that,
Yeah, exactly.
then,
Right.
So
you have liability.
Yeah.
You get to make those decisions.
So, but there's always that interpretation, and I also love the fact that there's usually a lawyer in the room.
Yeah.
But I never don't learn in the forms committee meeting. So,
absolutely.
You have some of those meetings that could have been an email. Forms is not one of those.
It's never that. Although, and also is one where if it was all in email, nobody would want to be on that committee.
No.
Oh my gosh.
Not
Could
to
you
mention-
imagine arguing in emails about commas and periods and semicolons and
I
those
can.
kinds of
I
situations?
can. And there
Yeah.
are things that I would rather do, like a root canal.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you.
Not to mention, agents love to read email, right? So we know how far we would actually get if they read their email.
So let's talk a little bit about the MLS. Like you say, I was when I was president, you were my presidential appointee, and then I was out a year later. I didn't. So I'm not there. I don't even know.
Does it feel weird?
No,
Not enough time. Enough time has passed.
It feels good. I went so hard with association work really early on, and that's because I had great mentors who really pushed me into that, and I learned so much, and I really value that experience. And obviously, this podcast is association work as well. But I have enjoyed taking a little bit of a step back and not being on so many committees all at once at the state and regional level, and really focusing on business and honing my craft and focusing on my agents. And it's been a benefit to me, and I came out better on the other side of all of that. I guess my question for you is, when your presidential year is done, what do you plan to do association wise? And are you gonna take a breath from some of that, or what's your plan? What's the post MLS, or not post MLS, post Jessica's presidential year on the MLS? What does that Jessica do? What does that Jessica look like?
I think Jessica takes a deep breath and tries to figure out. So, I mean, in the course of my time on the MLS, we've seen, like, it was just change after change after change, and then lawsuits, and how do we respond to? And so I think there has to be a time when I take a deep breath and put my shoulders down. I don't know that I have it in me to not serve.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be a big service, and even now, a lot of times when, I had an agent the other day, she goes, you didn't update your title to senior VP. And I was like, did you care about that? I was like, I'm a broker. I'm your managing broker. And that's and president and all of that other stuff, the titles don't matter, the work does. And so I don't think I will stop the work. It may look differently. It may be a smaller role, if that makes sense. I will definitely still be on forms committee if they'll have me.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's, definitely that need of evaluating what comes next. But in the last few years, I just haven't had that opportunity to look past what this looks like. Because in addition to the external changes, we also made a lot of substantial changes to the MLS board last year that were effective on January 1st of this year. And so right now I'm navigating new with the entire board of directors,
right,
even though there's many that have been on the board for a long time. And so what I won't do is that, knowing that everything we're doing right now is kind of brand new, is just be like, I'm out.
Right.
So you guys figure out what it looks like now, because now we're building a new foundation for MLS and what it looks like in the future. So I will make sure that that is stable, but I don't have to drive the ship.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think I felt, and I think that you just feel this when you're when you're serving, you're really focused on the organization, which is what you're supposed to be focused on.
Yep.
Your values, you bring your values at the very beginning to the table. And those values stick around, but then they become informed by the values that you kind of learn as you're serving the organization. And then those values stay kind of put the whole time you're serving.
Yeah.
And so when I came out of it, all of a sudden I had a chance to really think about where my personal values were and where and not that those were totally mismatched necessarily from the MLS, but you're not supposed to think about those things while you're serving on the board. And so I didn't. And having the opportunity to do so was really refreshing. And again, it's not like I came away and was like, I think totally differently than what I thought before. That's not really the deal. But to have
it's like becoming
freedom.
A parent, though, because
It is.
your world just changes from that experience. And, I look at data sets in a whole different. And here's the thing is that I had a big technology background on the employee benefit side before coming to real estate. And so the value of the data and everything made the MLS board kind of a natural thing for me. But I didn't know what I didn't know in 2022. And when you made that phone call to me, I'm like, you want me to do what? I don't know. And then presidential appointee year, regular director year, and then several people were like, you would be great on the leadership track. And I'm like, no, I don't think I'm ready. And you were like, yeah, you are. So not knowing what I would be thrust into, but none of us could have known what was coming. So, and it could have all looked very differently with a change in the lawsuit or anything like that. And so what do? Head down, go into the wind, and come out on the other side.
That's right. Let's shift gears a little bit. You kind of brought a perfect segue in. Let's talk a little bit about what the MLS provides. Not terribly long ago, if you were to ask people what the MLS provided, many people would respond that the offer of compensation was what the MLS provided. And that might be the very first thing that they said. There were, of course, other things, but that might have been the very first thing that many people would have said. When that was set to change, a lot of people were talking as though there wasn't any other value than that, and the MLS would be changed forever in doing so. That doesn't really seem to be the case. And I'm curious, from your perspective, what is the most important thing that the MLS is providing right now that has kept that value set strong in the eyes of the subscribers?
I think it is the integrity of the data and always shoring that up to make agents better at putting their data in. And, there's always the time where we can hear that associations and MLSs just want fines and they just want retribution and all of that other stuff. No, what we want is for agents to be better because we are putting information out to consumers. And we weren't putting out offers of compensation to consumers. But I will tell you, at an NAR event a couple of years ago, I was talking to a salesperson for one of the portals, and not knowing who I was or what I was there to represent, said, well, you guys really don't need MLSs. You can just put your stuff here. We can provide photos for you. We can do all of that. And I was like, and then I have to fight tooth and nail to get it. And I was like, but if I look at your website right now, at the very bottom on this listing, it says provided by Heartland MLS. So the staff would kill me for saying this, but if we turn the servers off for a day or an hour and MLS just went down, that data drives everything.
Right.
The input of that data drives everything. So agents need to be the best at that. We need to be the best at, how we interpret the data and how we provide the data and all of that. And there's definitely, that's not without challenge. And how do the portals get it, and all of those other different pieces. But we're holding on to that. We're providing what happens for appraisers to analyze, for agents to do comps, for buyers to decide, and that's a huge piece. And none of those ever involved an offer of compensation.
There are people that regionalization of the data. I think at last count there are like 485 MLSs or something.
Apparently
like
that number dropped yesterday. I saw it in the news.
Yeah, it's under 500 now, and so we're seeing consolidation. But when you think about that, like 485 MLSs across the country, in an environment that is rapidly evolving technologically, there are people that are saying that regionalization is creating friction in terms of technological development, and the ability for LLMs to be able to take in that data and provide consumers what they believe consumers are looking for. Do you think that there's a world where more consolidation occurs, or where a national MLS does end up taking hold as a result of people saying this is creating too much friction?
I think it could happen? Absolutely. I think that it's kind of like when people say AI is going to replace jobs. In our business, I think someone using AI replaces the one who's unwilling to do it. And so what happens if we have more data or we consolidate, like I love our data share options. I have an agent who lives part-time in Mexico, and so she just decided to get her license to sell real estate in Mexico. And that's a very different process. It's not a realtor organization. Right. But to have a Latin America data share while she's here in Kansas City is a huge benefit. Yeah. And that is a huge opportunity for additional commission dollars and referral dollars if we have access to the data. But carte blanche, just open it up and, hey, let me go look and see what's in LA. We have the opportunity to then poorly serve. I don't live in California day in and day out. I can't tell you what that marketplace looks like. I can't tell you about walk scores and things like that just because I can see a house is available. And that is where the people can never be replaced. And at that point, I think one large pool of everyone hurts the consumer. So could it happen? Does it happen with large portals when people can just look up an address anywhere in the world? You can. But I wouldn't want somebody to call me and say, hey, I saw this house in Illinois. Can you get your license and help me there?
So I see that perspective. But kind of what I'm hearing is that the downside of doing that is that there are agents who would then be willing to do the wrong thing or not necessarily follow what they subscribe to through the code of ethics, and operate outside of their purview, rather than it actually being an issue with the data being all in one place. It sounds like that's more of a problem with realtors.
I think it's more the ethics. It's the people are the problem, not the availability of data and what they would do with it. But that's pretty much the issue with anything, because today we can get online and look up just about any property in the world, but I'm not going to suddenly want to see the disclosures and try to help somebody write a contract on it because I'm not helping them.
Right.
But if I have the opportunity to say I have a great agent in your marketplace who I know can do this, then there's opportunity for me to be rewarded for that without hurting the consumer in the end.
Yeah. Obviously, at Heartland MLS, how many counties are we? I know Kip loves that map. We're 50 counties. Can you throw a link to the map in this in the episode notes, Amber?
Yeah. Including 5 in Oklahoma now. So yes, so
5 in Oklahoma. 50 counties. How many states then is that?
3 states.
It's 3 states. Yeah. Okay.
I think
we're coming for
2.1.
Arkansas. Yeah. We're coming to Arkansas. You look out, Arkansas. With that, obviously, we are a geographically large MLS. Yep. In fact, they classify us as a mega board.
As a mega board.
And now there are other boards that are much larger than us.
It's funny to sit in those meetings when I'm like, you have how many members?
Right, right. So. And I guess that's where I'm going with this. There are so many people probably don't realize this, but there are so many of those 485 MLSs. There are so many of them that are fewer than 100 members, which is, obviously inefficient.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it may be inefficient if they were modeled like us to have all of these products and services and to have all of this, access for 100 people. But if they're running a lean, tight ship and, you have lock boxes and you can have access to the listing data, but with 100 people, you're also talking about a lot of times rural areas, and in those 100 members, you've got 20 that are doing,
right.
the 80-20 rule that follows there. So I don't know, but I've also heard those execs and staff people, and what we're doing just sounds like light years away for them.
Right.
Seriously, there are times when we walk in rooms and I'm like, we did that in 2019. You guys are still... And
it's a big deal for them.
It's a big deal for them, but also kudos to Kip and Rob and the whole MLS and KCRAR staffs of how far ahead and how far we've done and what we've done. And also, I always tell Kip, I think he's got a little bit of an 8-ball and eye into the future, because he a lot of times has prepared us for stuff that I'm like, really? And 6 months later, I am hearing it, so I've at least heard him say it, to the best of his ability, but it awes me at some of those little bitty MLSs that what they're doing, or on the opposite end, a 50,000 agent association in MLS who is not doing some of these things that we're doing too. So, and I'm like,
and how can they serve so many members becomes the question. Yeah. So you're right. There are two ends of that spectrum. I think that there are so many different ways to think about efficiency, especially in this space, and it kind of depends on which industry you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I think that for a lot of people, when they think about efficiency, they might not be thinking about the actual efficiency of that operation. They're thinking about how inefficient it would be to subscribe to that individual data set and pay that individual data set's fees in order to acquire their data and display it on their portal, or to figure those kinds of things out. Yeah. And I think that that's tricky. And some people, any thoughts?
When I was in employee benefits, and I am a huge sports fan, and I would just be like, they can tell you the last time a 22-year-old was on the mound when it was 67 degrees on the fly while a live baseball game is going on. And I'm like, I am looking at this company and I'm trying to tell them how many appointments they've had that were related to diabetes, and this is why their prices are going up, and it would take me months to get that information, and I know I've got to request it in September before I have my meetings in January. And real estate data kind of falls in the middle. We have it, and that is one of the things that I would really like to see us doing as an MLS, where how we show that data and the value that we do. When you get off the plane coming to Kansas City for the World Cup, this is how many counties we're serving. This is how many listings that are coming, like why Heartland MLS at the airport of the source of real estate data. But then we've got to be able to give them a Rubik's Cube where you want to twist this and see how many 3-bedroom homes have sold, like on the fly, and be able to do that level of adjustments and edits and reviewing. Because, just kind of like the short-term rental arguments that we're seeing and everything, there's value there.
Yeah.
And the value is always a lot of times going to come back to the data. So,
of course. Do you feel so? Right now, the National Association of Realtors is having ongoing and, frankly, somewhat slow conversations about artificial intelligence and allowing major LLMs to have access to data feeds, and whether or not that falls into IDX, VOW back office agreements, and how it applies. Well, what do you see happening there?
I don't think we have a choice but to yield to it. Because, again, the person using AI is the one who can replace. And so there is enough information in public portals for LLMs to take advantage of and data scrape that the more involved we are in that conversation and what it looks like to provide that information, is that a revenue builder for us? Is it an assistant in what we can do at the next level because we have these LLMs that have access to our data? I feel like in a lot of ways we treat it like another broker, but not There's no agents attached to an LLM. There's no licenses attached to an LLM. But so there's another opportunity to say, at this level, your IDX is this cost because you're not putting in data and you're not providing insights to us. But if there are insights, or if there's a way that LLM then gets embedded into what the MLS vendors are providing, then it becomes a two-way street. But I don't know how we get around it. I mean, consider 2 years ago. I mean, when we were going through all of the forum stuff, like AI was just starting to happen, to have some of those conversations, and so much of the information it had access to was only 2 years old. And, so now it's just a given that I look at stuff and I know when somebody used ChatGPT to write it. I'm like, take the emojis and the line out so you can
add a fourth bullet point.
Right,
do something.
Or the AI pictures that everybody's doing to make their flyers. I was like,
they're draining all the reservoirs to post pictures of themselves.
So I'm like, I can't. But here's the thing. It's not going away.
Yeah.
So I think we lean into it.
It's not going away, and my soybeans in Galva aren't going to get the water they need.
No,
that's what's going on right there.
Not. So I'm ready for my zombie apocalypse.
So when we were first talking about Zestimates, right? The strategy that agents would use, and it was a strategy that they needed to take on because Zestimates were wildly inaccurate.
Yep.
And so what agents would do is they would show the Zestimate of one property and then show what it actually sold for, and kind of go through that process. And so when Zestimates came up, we kind of went through our strategy was to discredit it. AI is way more widely used than Zillow and a Zestimate right now.
It can still be discredited.
And it
a
can
lot of
still
times
be
it is
discredited.
like having a petulant 2-year-old.
Of course.
That is not the prompt that I typed.
But it is it's so much more confident. And it's hard to discredit something that speaks with the level of confidence that some realtors might have a difficult time matching in the living room. I question if discrediting AI is a good long-term strategy, or if, like you said, embracing it and figuring out how to make sure that it's actually more correct is helpful. If too many people are armed with inaccurate data that was provided to them so confidently, I think that might be worse than them being armed with good data that came from an LLM.
I think that, one, it's kind of like the offers of compensation. If you don't know where your value is, I don't care how confident an AI or another person is. If I know the answer, then therein lies the problem. And I think it also becomes an issue of AI doesn't have a license.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and I had to tell an agent the other day, ChatGPT can't pay your fines if you get fined for this. ChatGPT can't cost you my license, which is a problem. And so your screenshots from ChatGPT, when I am telling you here's what the issue is, don't have value. But they're going to keep using it. They're going to keep looking it up. And so one of my favorite things now is, like being in 6th grade, cite your source.
Yeah.
And so when I use AI and give it a prompt, I also make it cite its source. And I am working with a new vendor for marketing, and when they do their onboarding, the entire conversation is recorded, and all of the marketing conversations are recorded, and they use that to build a custom GPT for that individual or that company. So that it can retain its voice and knows the sources that it likes to use and things like that. But honestly, it is back to writing a book report and citing our sources.
Yeah.
And
Wikipedia is not enough.
Wikipedia is not enough. And it's to me, that's what can argue the confidence of AI very easily. Of you use a source from 1992, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Make it go find a better source or justify where it came from, and that, to me, that usually fights that confidence. But if an agent is so willing to hey, write this listing description, and your listing description sounds like a mansion when your house is going to fall into a sinkhole, is a problem because you gave it the voice and you didn't go in and check its work. That's where the human element has to come in, and a lot of times where it doesn't.
So our MLS vendor, formerly CoreLogic, now known as Cotality.
Cotality.
It's Cotality. It's not Cotality?
Not Cotality.
Jessica, I think they're not a sponsor of this podcast, are they? I think I've been saying Cotality to everybody. I'm kidding.
I love you.
But Cotality sounds better to me than Cotality. I don't know what Cotality means. What does Cotality mean? What was this rebrand?
We don't know.
What were they doing?
So my phone still autocorrects to CoreLogic.
So Cotality, they're never going to be a sponsor of this podcast now.
No.
So Cotality, they... obviously, very large company. I don't think that people really fully realize how large Cotality really is, and also the fact that they are not only focused on providing real estate professionals with data and services. They have other revenue-generating practices and pillars for profit that work very, very well for them. And it's difficult to say for sure, but seems likely that some of those might even be more lucrative than their MLS data piece of business, right?
So there will be Cotality has a lot of AI user interfaces and things like that they are building into, but in terms of testing and costs and all of those other things. So their floor plan options when agents are scanning a room with their cell phone that can be integrated with One Home and Matrix is one of their tools that we are actively pursuing. So Raise is done. How about that?
Raise!
Raise is done. So for everyone that saw James Dwiggins last year and waited patiently for us to roll it out.
Was that just last year? Was that 2 years ago?
It was last year's Recharge.
That's right. That's right. We interviewed him.
So Raise is done, but there's going to be some really cool pieces that come out of today's Recharge.
Yeah. What is the sorry, I'm going to backtrack this.
Okay.
10 years from now. Mm-hmm. Does MLS exist as we think of it today?
Exist, as we think of it today, no. I think that 10 years from now, it's fully AI integrated. Like, hey, Matrix, let's start putting in a listing. I would give anything to be talking at the listing appointment when I know sellers have signed to say, I am walking through this house. Here's what I need you to input. Here's, so that I can speak to it, or that it's, I hate using this analogy, but it works, the TurboTax of input, making things substantially easier. What data set that we get from appraisers who are currently changing their process and their landscape, then Matrix is telling me this house was listed 2 years ago. Here's some information that I already have. Is this the same? Is it not? If I can do that right there with the sellers, then, and what if some of that conversation fills a seller's disclosure out? Like, that's my perfect world of being able to, whether you want to talk to it or a video uploads information for it or a scan. But I also think that, hey, Matrix, I am in this subdivision. Tell me about the comps. Because it's getting smarter. It understands what comps are. It understands what a subdivision is, which, in Kansas City, that's not always easy because Brookside's not a subdivision.
Right.
And
it confuses public record with MLS data, and none of them know how to work together. Yep.
So, but keep in mind that one of the things I tell brand new agents getting in the business is that the water hose to the face of overwhelm is because there are so many tools, and the magnitude of tools it's hard to follow and it's hard to track who does what. And like, if you have a tool that you use to look up properties, so hashtag MLS Touch, that was our favorite app for years.
You've always loved it.
I've always loved it. I still don't have it on my phone. But find your favorite tool and use it. But I think 10 years from now, those tools become less because they're integrated and who bought who out and there's totality on them all and all of those other things. But
well, it's funny that you say that because that's kind of where I'm going, because a lot of this already does exist. So a lot of what you've described, and I know that you know this because you and I have talked about it, we don't have it, but there are people that do have a system that just asks the seller the questions that are needed for a seller's disclosure in the form of an LLM. There are companies that have that kind of technology already put together, and it actually works. It isn't like we're waiting for this to like be ready to go. So I guess my question becomes, why is it going to take? I agree with you. It's going to take a long time. But it all exists. Why is it going to take so long?
I had a conversation the other day about the seller's disclosure, conversationally doing it. Our struggle, 2 states. Mm-hmm. So when we become more regionalized and we incorporate Oklahoma data too, that then changes. So like fundamentally, state forms, that seriously is where one of the vendors that I talked to recently, and this is not with my MLS hat on, but as a broker, they can't accommodate us right now because their LLM is also factoring in state laws. And so this form adheres to this one state. And I'm like, make your LLM smarter because we already have the form. It should just be asking these questions. So I recently had a listing where my seller was visually impaired. And so I had to read every single form. And I realized how many questions on the seller's disclosure. He's like, haven't I answered this like 7 times? Mm-hmm. But I had to record it all so that I had a record of, because he signed it after I said, I filled everything out the way that you told me to. But yeah, that was the hiccup. But if we go back to the fact that our forms incorporate having 2 states, and that's such a fundamental change, I wonder how much that across the board would be what some of the issues are for all the things, outside of the lawyers and the legal talk and all of those different things.
And the people who move slow. Yes. The people who evolve slowly. Yeah.
But, I mean, consider the people who were like, I don't want to use AI.
The fear.
Yeah. So, and so honestly, I don't think 10 years will look very differently than what we know it could look like today because those tools are existing, but they are evolving very slowly.
Jessica, is there anything that we haven't talked about that we should have talked about today? We went around
we
quite a few mountains.
No.
Yeah, I think we covered pretty much. We probably talked about things we shouldn't have talked about today.
Less than we would normally do. So there's no bleeps, no cut that out. There's not a lot of that. So I have a question for you.
Okay.
What is your favorite but most underutilized field in MLS? What do agents not fill out?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. You know what's funny? When I started on MLS, which now it's funny, that's a long time ago. I feel like an old person.
Back in my day.
I'm not old, but I'm like, when I think about it, I'm like, man, things have really changed. But when I started on MLS, it still wasn't a mandatory field to put square footage in there, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And so, to be honest with you, I think that most of the fields that can, I think they're used. I think the big ones are all covered. The ones that I think people miss are buried in interior and exterior features and green features. And I think that the junk in, junk out situation is only going to be compounded by the use of artificial intelligence. As people are telling their AI what it is they're looking for and getting extremely specific, or AI is coming up with what it is they're looking for. Let me tell you what you're looking for. There are fields and selections that could be made in those lists that we don't think often about that could benefit those systems, and could therefore benefit those consumers. So that's why, to be honest, like part of our conversation, I'm a huge advocate for figuring out an input procedure that is fully, an AI situation, because making sure that data is consistent and that all of those questions are asked and not just looked over, whether it is a yellow field or not, that is the only way that data is really going to be strong enough to get full utilization.
Yeah. That's definitely one of our big key goals too this year, is looking at ways to incent agents and brokers for better data.
Well, we've been down that path.
Oh, that path is right back in front of us.
That's crazy. I can't remember what we used to call it, but it was like the data integrity, and like the brokers would get paid, and then the brokers may or may not give that money back to their agent. At
Not
BHG,
my
I don't
issue.
think they did.
We never saw it. My favorite fields that agents never fill out are the actual schools.
Yeah.
And so I always have to teach agents, make your funnel a little bit bigger, because if you're looking for one school and they didn't put it in there, it won't come into the data. And I'm like, just go look it up. All you have to do is look at the school bus routes or the map. And I know it changes all the time and routes change all the time, but that's better data for our consumers. But yeah, I think, I'm not really surprised about stuff that's not required anymore, but there were times when I'm like, why is this not yellow?
Yes, absolutely. No, it's a crazy thing.
Nope. So,
well, Jessica, it was awesome to have you back on
Fantastic.
the podcast.
Thank you.
And we covered a lot of cool things today.
Yeah, so.
I think that listeners will get a lot out of this one.
Yeah. So let me know what you think when we come off the stage today, because we do have some big nuggets.
Why? What's going on?
It's a secret.
It's
I can't
a secret.
Tell you.
You have a secret?
I do.
You're withholding. We were here for an hour almost, and you're withholding a secret?
I am. It's my fiduciary responsibility to the board.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
But you can tell me as soon as I come off the stage.
All right. I'm excited.
All
I'm
right.
going to come find you.
Sounds good.
All right, Jessica. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Alex.